like to call the regular meeting of the Larkspur City Council on October 5th at approximately 6:30 p.m. And if we could have a roll call.
Councilmember Chu.
Here.
Councilmember Hilmer.
Here.
Vice Mayor Haroff.
Here. And I guess now we can do the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, well, again, welcome. I don't think we have any presentations this evening, and we have what may be a relatively short agenda. So let's get going with the consent calendar. We've had a request to pull 2 items tonight from the consent calendar. That'd be item 3.3 and item 3.4. With those exceptions, do we have a vote on approval of the consent calendar?
So moved. Second.
Would you like to take those items up now?
I think we ought to. Yeah,
Okay.
Let's go ahead and do that. Do we need a vote on the consent calendar? I think we just
You should vote on the
should
remainder.
vote on that.
Yeah.
And so all those in favor,
Aye.
please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone saying no? The consent calendar is approved. Thank you. So, Mr. City Manager, if you could go ahead and address those 2 items right off the bat, that'd be great.
Item 3.3 is the acceptance of the City Hall window replacement and remodel project. And as you can see, the Public Works Director, Julian Skinner's here and can answer questions in addition to myself. The remodel projects actually span 3 different Public Works Directors, so I appreciate Julian coming in to do the conclusion of this work. But as the council knows, and we've talked about several times, the budget, the anticipated amount we spent and the amount that we've actually spent are significantly different due to unforeseen problems once we start opening up the building. We're working on reconciling those. We're prepared to accept the work that has been done. All the work by the contractors completed. We are still working through some of the bills. And as we've also indicated in this item, we are, as we've signaled to you before, we've been slowly reconciling projects that were funded under the 2013 loan that the city took for capital purposes, and believe there's capacity in there to address much of the costs here. So with that, I turn it back to you, and I'm available and Mr. Skinner's available.
Okay, any questions from the council on these matters?
No.
Hearing none. Any comments from the public? Hearing none, I would call for a motion to approve those 2 items.
Okay. Given that staff has given regular updates, including in the mid-year budget on these items, I have no other questions. So I'll move to approve Resolution 5516 to approve the replacement and window replacement and remodel project.
5616.
Oh, 5516?
Oh,
I
right.
have 5616.
5616.
5516's on top.
We may be getting a little mixed up here.
Oh,
5516.
5516.
5516?
Yeah.
I'll second the motion.
Okay. Can I call for both then, folks? All say aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any noes? Motion is passed. Anything else on the comments? Ken, do you still need to address the second item, or is we done?
I think Mr. Skinner's available to any comments you have on the second item. I think there are members of the public present who are interested in the other item that you pulled.
Anything from the council on this
You
item?
should check. Is your mic on?
I'm sorry, item 3.4? Can we have some comment from the public?
Julian, do you want to explain briefly?
Anyone in the public who would like to comment on this item?
Do you want Mr. Skinner to make a...
Oh, I'm sorry, I
Opening
thought
comment?
he was not going to do
Sorry.
that.
I can give a little, just a little brief overview of this item. It's an administrative request to have the city's Parks and Recreation Commission serve as a review body for Transportation Development Act projects, which are bicycle and pedestrian projects primarily. The reason for this is earlier this year, the city did apply for a grant as part of the One Bay Area Grant Program for crosswalk improvements at Madrona Magnolia. Initially, that grant application was for Safe Routes to Schools program. However, that's a federal program. Based on the size of the program, it was deemed not a good fit for that program. And so the Transportation Authority of Marin staff recommended it instead be awarded a TDA, Transportation Development Act grant of $115,000. Which is a better fund source for that scale of project. However, one of the issues with the TDA program is that MTC has a new set of requirements for agencies that accept Transportation Development Act grants, and one of those is that the project has to be reviewed by the body's BPAC, or Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. As you're aware, Larkspur does not have a current functioning BPAC. In Marin County, of the 11 agencies, 6 of those do have BPACs, 5 of them don't. And so there are other agencies out there that don't have BPACs that have run into this issue before. And so in talking with MTC, who administers this grant, they said that other agencies in the past had their city council assign the responsibility of being the BPAC, specifically for this grant, to one of their standing boards or commissions. They gave us a few examples of other cities that had done this. And so we looked through the history and saw that in the past, the cities of Larkspur's Parks and Recreation Commission has acted as an advisory body for bicycle and pedestrian projects in the past. And so, however, the MTC required an updated resolution that specifically said that. So that's why we drafted this resolution. Which basically assigns the authority to review these TDA project grants to the city's Parks and Rec Commission. It's not intended that they become a full-blown BPAC and that they entertain these issues at every single one of their meetings. It's purely for the purpose of these TDA grants that require that review as part of the application. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Are there any questions from the council? Any questions or comments from the public?
All right, Cindy Winter, Green Bray, and I'm sorry to do this to Julian because we don't have a BPAC. But as someone who's worked with cycling transportation issues for 2 decades, I'm afraid that if Parks and Recreation becomes a fallback position for approval of bike transportation projects, that the impression will be given that cycling for transportation purposes is a recreational activities, and bicycles are kind of like a set of golf clubs, and that doesn't set well with me. I looked at the Larkspur Parks Department bulletin. They have courses in tennis, art, archery, and acting, among other courses. The only nexus with bike and pedestrian, no, they have pedestrians, but the only nexus with cycling is a mountain bike class for kids in 6th grade to 8th grade. And let's see, I forgot my notes. It seems to me that since the city council has always refused to have a full-fledged BPAC on the basis of costs, that by using your municipal code section 248030, that you could have a BPAC that would not be called one, it would be called a BAC, because it would be derived from the MTC definition of a BPAC, which is very minimal, it's loose. And a committee under the municipal code can be formed, consider something, and then be disbanded. And there seems to be a lot of flexibility here that might be useful. And in addition, to meet the requirements of the MTC BPAC, Larkspur must be involved in comprehensive bicycle planning. You are involved in comprehensive bicycle planning because the master plan will be approved soon. Soon is an indefinite concept, but I think it will be soon. And so you need to have an MTC back in place as long as that master plan is outstanding. And then once that is approved by the city council, and I'm sure that it will be approved, you can disband the back, or what I would suggest is putting it up in the attic, and then if you need it in the spring, maybe DPW will apply for another TDA 3 grant. Then you can bring it down from the attic and dust it off, and it will be there. It's not that you have to have regular meetings with minutes taken, with DPW present, with Robert's Rules of Order, which the Court of Madera BPAC has. It's a wonderful BPAC, but it costs some money. What I am proposing under the municipal code and the MTC back will not cost any money. And it's flexible. I think it's a win-win deal. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Cindy. Anyone else in the public, please?
Dwayne Price from Elm Avenue.
Dwayne.
I want to thank our Public Works for finding an ad hoc solution to this problem of making sure that we got the money. But we need a permanent solution here because what we're getting is an ad hoc temporary solution. Things have changed over the years. I think most of you have noticed this. We're getting a whole lot more people out there riding and walking. They want the facilities, and they need the facilities. So we're going to continue to have this problem. It's not going to go away. Just keep that in mind. It's going to keep coming up and coming up and coming up. The Parks and Rec Commission, as has been pointed out, is not qualified to do this. Its charter does not specify what needs to be done in terms of engineering and pedestrian bicycle concerns. What we need, and what people are going to be suggesting, other people, is we do need a new kind of commission. So what that will be, well, there are lots of solutions, and I'm sure that you folks can come up with some good solutions. Now, I know that heretofore, our real problem has been money. We don't want to pay for more staff time and so forth for another commission. And I understand that. I mean, I pay taxes here too. So just here's a possible solution for you, that the Parks and Rec Commission charter gets changed to include these things. And then you change its name and you call it the Transportation, Circulation, Parks, and Recreation Commission. So in closing, once again, I want to congratulate our DPW for doing its job. And I then want to encourage you folks to now do your job and make this a permanent solution. Thank you.
Thank you, Dwayne. Appreciate that. Anyone else?
Nancy Wenninger, Elm Avenue in Larkspur. I have been an advocate for bicycling for 18 years now. I've been on the Marin County Bicycle Advisory Group for 13 years. I've been on the Transportation Authority of Marin BPAC since it was formed several years ago. So I've got a fair amount of experience in how jurisdictions deal with bicycle and pedestrian issues. A lot of good things have happened in Larkspur in my tenure as a bicycle advocate. The three that pop to mind immediately: the Cow Park Tunnel, the new bridge over East Sir Francis Drake Boulevard, and my personal favorite, the Sandra Marker Trail, which I think is the crown jewel of the North-South Greenway. I have 3 comments I want to make. First of all, echoing what Dwayne said, to thank Julian for coming up with a way to meet the minimum requirements to get the funding needed for this project that's been funded on Magnolia Avenue. Second thing is, if the council does go ahead and approve the resolution as it was proposed, it leaves me as an advocate wondering how to interact with the fact that these issues now come before Park and Rec. And also, specifically about the bicycle pedestrian master plan, that is one of the requirements of the MTC resolution of the Bicycle Advisory Committee, that it assist in the development and approval of comprehensive bicycle plans, and that process is in progress, and so my assumption would be that Park and Rec would now need to become part of that. I know that Dwayne and Cindy have been working for months on the content of the plan, and so I think it would be important, if it's possible, for the advocates here on Larkspur and DPW and Parks and Rec to get together, if this resolution is passed, to figure out how do we all work together to make sure that what needs to get done with bicycle pedestrian issues gets taken care of. I forget who it was. Julian mentioned that Parks and Rec had been involved in bicycle pedestrian issues in the past. In my tenure, the only time I believe they were involved was when the original bicycle pedestrian master plan was created back in the early 2000s. And the way that worked at that time was I made the list of projects that I thought needed to be done in Larkspur in conjunction with DPW, and basically gave it to the Park and Rec Commission, who considered it and approved it the way it was. So essentially, the Park and Rec people didn't have a lot to do with the content of what was going on. They were just the rubber stamp. The third point I want to make is that I would love to have a real BPAC. My count of BPACs disagrees just a little bit with Julian's. I believe Sausalito, Corte Madera, Tiburon, San Anselmo, Fairfax, Santa Fe, and Novato have BPACs. Ross and Belvedere are exempt because their population is under 10,000. So that leaves Larkspur basically as the only community that's required to have a BPAC that doesn't have one. One of the things that galvanized my career as a bicycle advocate was the fact that I came before the council back in 1998, 1999, at the start of the countywide bicycle planning process, and asked, as every municipality in the county was asked, for a bicycle pedestrian advisory committee to be formed. And the answer was no. And that really heated me up a little bit. And at that time, there were people on the council who were not exactly hostile to bicyclists, but not sympathetic necessarily to their needs also. And that is not at all the way I feel about the current members of the council. I believe that you're all reasonable, considerable, sympathetic people to the issue of the mobility and safety of your citizens. And we are in a period of transition where complete streets is now the policy, where we are not concerned just with how quickly you can get cars through an intersection, but how everybody who uses our transportation facilities can use them safely and comfortably. And so I would like to have a permanent BPAC. That would be my request. Not one that's ad hoc that gets put up in the attic, but one that is available to address the needs of cyclists and pedestrians, which don't come around just once a year when TDA funds are allocated. It doesn't come around once every 5 years or every 10 years when bicycle pedestrian master plans come up for review. They come up all the time. And at the moment, there is not a mechanism for citizen advocates to deal with these issues with the current administrative setup in the city of Larkspur. And I think that that is something that I would like to see happen.
Okay, thank you very much. And anything else?
No.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate those comments. Anyone else from the public who would like to comment on this issue, please?
Jean Suffering House,
Hi,
East
Jean.
Greenbury. Hi. thank you very much to DPW Julian Skinner for bringing this forward into some kind of a public body so that we could have some movement forward on this discussion. I'm glad to see that. I have been for 15 years the advocate for my community. There's about 600 people that live on the east side of 101 South Dakota Madera Creek. I'm specifically the advocate for the Greenbrae Boardwalk. I'm also now for 2 or 3 years, been on the Caltrans Bicycle Advisory Committee for the 9 counties of the Bay Area. And there are constantly issues that come up. There's new directions, there's new things to think about in getting funding. I think the things I'm most excited about is that we now have a definition from the governor and then from Caltrans of what is a protected bikeway. And the protected bikeway is known as Class 4, and that doesn't even show up in the MTC language in this resolution because it came in January 1st, and their process is a little slow to get that in. But you know, I would hope that we would have more chances to get protected bikeway discussion into anything. And so I'm wondering if we could ask, if it does go to Park and Rec, that we know who are the people with bicycle and pedestrian background on that. I couldn't tell from the website, nor could I tell that anybody is required to have that from that group. So if there's some way to know who we go to talk to, perhaps if we could have the advocates, thank you, Nancy, for all the trails we have here, sit down with DPW Skinner and the Parks and Rec director, so we know what kind of a process there would be. That would be really helpful for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gina. Appreciate it. And I'm sure we'll be more than happy at the city level to interact with you and others to make sure that those concerns are addressed in an appropriate way. Anyone else from the public on this? I think we can bring it back to the council then at this point. Any comments or questions?
Yes. You know, we have a council committee that deals with safe routes to school related things, and that's how we've always handled it. So, you know, at this point, usually we meet at, you know, several times a year, typically at the beginning of the school year. I don't think we've had a meeting yet, you know, this September. But, you know, if we're to have, you know, that also included participation of police, public works, and recreation. So all the directors and, you know, the chief or his appointee were always at those meetings. They also included, you know, the representatives from each of the local schools. You know, I guess one of the things I'll leave to staff is whether that particular body can assume and meet the requirements of something like this when it comes up, and where you place it, you know, something you can come back and present to the council. But we do have a council appointee to, you know, that particular committee.
Councilmember Hilmer?
It's a question for the city manager, and you might have to get back to us on this. When are the next slots open on the Park and Rec Commission?
I don't know, do you guys?
That's the soonest. 2 years? All right, thank you.
Sorry, anything else from the council? Can I have a motion then?
I'll just make an observation and then I'll make the motion. Larkspur has a long tradition of kind of multitasking amongst its commissions, and that's kind of how we've always done things. The Park and Rec Commission has taken responsibility for assuming heritage tree ordinance enforcement. Other commissions kind of look to help us, and staff for that matter. We have a tradition here of multitasking in the staff. The council does a lot of stuff. So I hope you'll appreciate that we're not ignoring or abandoning our duties here. And I'm open to the conversation of maybe relabeling some things or adding things to the Park and Rec Commission's charter, encouraging you to run for the commission slots when they open up. I think there are many ways to strengthen this. But I personally am not fearful of transferring these duties over to the Park and Rec Commission. I think they're perfectly capable and qualified to learn about what needs to be done, and I'm sure with your help and understanding, I'm sure you'll be at the meetings. There'll be quick studies, I assure you, if they're not already there. So I'm confident we can make this work, but we'll just keep working together. That's the way we do it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And I just want to echo those comments, Dan. I think this is a good first step for the city's engagement on these issues. And, I agree with you. I think we have a long tradition within this city of working with the bicycle community and various constituencies to make sure that our needs are met. And I appreciate your ongoing involvement, personally. With that, do I have a motion to approve resolution number 5616?
I'll make the motion, Mr. Mayor.
Second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, and anyone opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. And with that, I think we're on to our city manager's oral report.
Thank you. And I have a very brief report for you this evening. First, as the council's aware, and Marin IJ was nice enough to run an article. We have a new library director starting on Monday. Janice Ackle will be joining us from the city of Palm Desert, where she's currently, I think until last week, she was the library director there. We're really excited to have Janice coming on board. And this is she's told me, an excellent career opportunity for her, and also she does have family in the area, so she's very excited to be able to bring those two interests together. So I hope you'll have an opportunity next week to stop by the library and say hi to Janice.
And she seems really well qualified, and I think we're all appreciative of your work in trying to bring her on.
Well, thank you. And we actually, the library is a unique place, so we did a very unique recruitment for this position, and we had a stakeholders panel that vetted the candidates, and we had a panel of library directors vet the candidates. So I'm very appreciative to all that effort to find the right person. There's a new town manager you might have heard in Corte Madera, and I started meeting with him today to talk about our fire consolidation discussions. So those are going on. I know you haven't gotten an update in a while. We are knee-deep in the minutia of modeling the costs that are involved, both at a staffing level and operation level. So that work is going on. It's been going on in the background, and now that Mr. Cusimano is well situated in his new seat, we will move that process forward, I think, rather quickly. We're hoping to have your ad hoc committee meet at least once before the end of the calendar year to provide them with an update and seek some general direction.
And I think we're all happy to have Todd as a partner in this process, so we're looking forward to a good outcome. Just a quick question. I think when we were first getting started on this dialogue about the consolidation, we were looking towards maybe getting some concrete proposals by the end of the year. How's our schedule looking?
We've shifted our goal to be the end of the fiscal year. The two things are going on that have driven that, in addition to it's just takes a lot longer than we had hoped. But there are two legal issues going on. One was the learning that as of January 1, we have to go through LAFCO as part of our process. So I've been negotiating with LAFCO what that process will look like. I don't think it'll be too cumbersome, but it will take 3 months at least, if not a little longer, to go through all the hoops there. The second is we do have to resolve the effect that pension reform had on forming this type of agency. We've mentioned to you before, we'll probably need a special bill in the legislature. But at the same time, these JPAs are being talked about all throughout the state for fire. Fire is a service that lends itself very well to this type of agreement. And so the legislature is talking about a comprehensive bill to deal with this very issue. So we're trying to understand the timing of that. So it worked well to set our goal to the end of the fiscal year back from the calendar year. But from the perspective of the citizens, both fire departments are working together now under the agreement that you past under one joint command staff. And also, we have firefighters from both agencies staffing the stations. So folks are already seeing the collaborative effort. We're now dealing in the background with how do we make that a permanent and formal operation.
Okay, thank you very much.
And then two items I wanted to share from Public Works. One is we've been working rapidly to deal with getting work that we can't do once it's raining, and one of those is curb painting. So you may have noticed that around town we've been restriping and repainting curbs. We are almost done with that. So we have not had any clandestine efforts to hide our red curbs that you might have read happened in another jurisdiction. And then the second thing, which actually is also beat the rain
That would
related.
never happen.
We did want to beat the rain also on our storm drain cleanup, and I understand the crews feel they've finished all the annual storm drain cleanup just in time for the upcoming rain season. We're paying particular attention to the neighborhoods that had some challenges last year. As the council knows, some of those challenges are infrastructure related, but we did learn through last year's experience some things we could do to reduce the impact of the infrastructure problems, so we are doing those things. Turn back to you.
Okay, thanks. And I remember a conversation with you about this time last year when we were thinking about El Nino and the winter that we were expecting at that time. Any forecast for what we should experience this time
Well,
of year?
the biggest thing I would remind everyone is that we've been through a long period of drought, and drought creates a lot of stress on large trees. And if we get heavy rainfalls and we get multiple days of heavy rainfalls, the effect on trees whose root systems have been strained is unknown, and we have in the past had, particularly redwoods, we've had redwoods fall when those two conditions are met. So I encourage all folks who have redwoods on their property, all large trees, but particularly redwoods, to have somebody take a look at how they're doing and make sure they're ready for the rainy season.
Well, thanks, because I got a redwood. And I got to pay attention to it, so I appreciate that. Okay, any questions for the city manager on his report tonight? Well, I think we'll go to council members' reports and comments. Do we have anything from our council this evening?
No.
I'll just report very briefly on two items. Last week, I went to an all-day annual retreat for MC Clean Energy, kind of reviewing the year that we've had with that organization, and looking forward to the future. And I'm pleased to report to the community that MC is doing just fine. It continues to grow. It continues to bring new jurisdictions into its system, into its service area. It continues to be competitive on rates. It continues to provide a leadership role within the community aggregation community around the state of California. It is, in that context, providing a leadership role in the formation of what is essentially a trade association that will represent the interests of CCAs throughout the state, and provide a little bit of a competitive balance between those organizations and the larger utilities with whom we compete. So it was a very productive conversation, and I was very pleased, as I've been for the last several years, to be a part of that discussion. On the 22nd, I also, in lieu of Commissioner Helmer, attended the Transportation Authority of Marin's meeting. Also a very interesting meeting. Two things that I think are worth noting is a report by the Executive Director on progress on the third lane on the San Rafael-Richmond Bridge. Some of the administrative issues still need to be addressed, particularly on this side of the bridge. But there's progress being made, and I think there's an expectation within TAM that in 2017 that lane will be open. And I think that will be appreciated by everyone who lives anywhere within 50 miles of where we are right now. Also had a very interesting and robust conversation about Marin County's Safe Routes to Schools program. They are required to do I think, an annual evaluation or periodic evaluation of that program. And they prepared a very comprehensive report addressing a lot of issues about the support that the county has been providing to communities throughout Marin on that program, and it was very interesting and worthwhile hearing that presentation. So I was glad to have the opportunity to participate in that meeting. And that's all I have. Larry, you got anything?
No, thank you.
Okay, so I think with that, we will open the meeting to public comment on matters that are not on the agenda over which we have jurisdiction. We will not have discussion at the council level on any of those matters. We'll try to keep the time limited, although we're doing pretty well on our schedule. So if anyone has comments they'd like to provide in this context, I see one. Cindy, come on back.
Thank you. I have one brief comment. I was also at that TAM meeting on the 22nd, and the Safe Routes to Schools report is spectacular. I did not read each and every of the 250 pages, but I did skim through them, and I would urge each and every one here to take a glance at it and familiarize yourself with all the work and effort that went into it, and the way it's organized. It can be reevaluated each year and new statistics put into it to see how the various districts are doing. So that was a real highlight for the county. That's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Cindy. This is the report that they shared with us. It's about an inch thick, and it provides evaluations of schools throughout Marin on their engagement in that program and the progress that they've made. I was a little chagrined that the ranking that was afforded to some of the other jurisdictions around our community got a little bit higher scores than our local districts, but we did pretty well. And I think we're all making good progress on that front. So thank you for attending. I did notice you were there that day. Yes. Hall did quite well. Redwood, pretty close. So thank you very much. Anything else from the public this evening? If not, we will go to our public hearings, and I think we have one item, item 7.1 on session fees for the use of electric vehicle charging stations. So if we can have a report on that, that'd be great. Julian?
Okay, so this public hearing is the first step in establishing session charges for public use of the city's 3 electric vehicle charging stations. These stations were installed, 3 of them in late 2013 as part of a grant we received. 2 in the Piper Park parking lot and 1 in the Central Marin Police Authority parking lot. As they were installed, there was a decision made to not charge for the use of these stations initially, and that we would monitor their use over time and come back to council at a later date to discuss fees for the use of these 3 stations. And so it's been a couple of years now, so we have some data from their use. Even though we haven't been charging for the use of these stations, they are monitored, and through software we are able to get in and see how many times people have connected and how much power they've drawn from that particular charging station. And so in analyzing the data, again, there's 3 stations. They're all close together near Piper Park, so they have pretty similar use. But that use has steadily increased. We looked at it in 6-month chunks over the last 2 years, and so an average now of about 600 cars, or charges, I should say, per station over that 6-month period, which boils down to about an average of 3.5 cars per day are using each one of those stations. And so in looking at how to charge or recoup our costs, because people who plug in there obviously are using electricity that ultimately we're paying for, we looked at what other agencies in Marin and elsewhere are doing. A lot of agencies in Marin under the same program, the same grant, did install similar charging stations. Of those, most are in the same position as us. They did not establish fees initially, wanting to see what everybody else was going to do. However, both the County of Marin and Mill Valley have already established rates of $1 per hour. And in researching this and looking at places outside of Marin, I can say $1 per hour is very much on the low end of nationwide what people are charging for the use of these stations. So we looked at the $1 per hour, and then we kind of looked at what our costs would be. And so having all of this data, we were able to look at the amount of power that had been used and also look at the PG&E bills to determine what we're being charged by PG&E. Now, because we're not a public utility, we can't just flat out charge people for the power. We cannot charge people per kilowatt hour that they use because we're not a public utility. So we have to charge, and however other agencies are avoiding this is they're charging per hour. So what we looked at was how much power on average do we use over that hour when a car is plugged in, and then what is our average charge from PG&E for that power to come up with an average per hour cost. And funnily enough, it works out to right around $1 an hour, which is what the county and Mill Valley are already charging. And so that seemed like a good first step in establishing the fee. It should be noted that fee accounts only for the power. Now, these things have only been installed for a few years, so we don't have a whole lot of maintenance history on them. They've been under warranty, but moving forward, anything that needs to be adjusted or maintained on them is also going to incur a cost to the city. So moving forward, we're proposing to charge the $1 per hour. We will be monitoring the use to see if it goes up, and also monitoring the amount of time, staff time, and maintenance that goes into these to see if that's a fee that we want to recoup in the future. And so that's the basis of the presentation, and so I'm available for any council questions.
Okay, any questions?
Yeah, I have a couple expense items. One of them you brought up. On the maintenance, is there any history either from the manufacturer or from jurisdictions who have had it longer so we can start collecting the additional fees so that, you kind of building up a reserve for it?
Because these were all installed at the same time and all came with the same warranties, there's not a whole lot of history on what the practice would be to base something moving forward. There's been a variety of instances where there have been some issues with some of these stations, including our own, but they were repaired under warranty. And in some cases, we had to do some of the work, but the parts came for free, and in other cases, they did the work and did the replacement. But again, we're talking about a short period here over the last 2 years. And in speaking with some of the other agencies, they have had similar issues maintenance-wise. It's basically one circuit board inside the unit, so if any one little thing goes wrong, it affects the operation of the whole unit, and unfortunately, it puts it out of service. And for the most part, you have to ship the whole circuit board back and then get a new one. You can't individually fix things. So we don't have any costs on what it would be if we had to replace one of these units or how much labor it takes, because again, it's been done under warranty to this point.
Okay, the second thing is, are the merchant fees for the transaction significant enough where we would want to recuperate that?
I don't know off the top of my head what they are. It may be the program is you have to actually sign up with the manufacturer of the charging station in order to use their facility. And I'm not sure if that is an additional charge on their end or if it's something that gets taken out of our $1 per hour. I would have to research that.
Okay.
I don't think it's that significant based on the fact that it's $1 an hour. But
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay, Dan, you have anything? I just had a question about the arrangements for providing the power to these stations. So we're getting access to PG&E power for each of these stations as opposed to MCE. Is that correct?
The bill I looked at said PG&E on it, but
Well-
I'm not sure about the exact.
Because
The two in
PG&E's
the-
billing processes are a little
The,
confusing,
the
so.
two in the park are hooked up to our account, so we're an MCE customer, so it's an MCE connection. And then the one at CMPA is tied to their account, and they are also an MCE customer. So, but I could see that the bill probably says PG&E at the top, but it, as I understand it, we're providing that power.
Correct.
So, yeah.
Yeah, PG&E does the billing.
Yeah.
But the power is actually procured from
Yeah.
from MCE, I assume.
Yes.
And one thing I'd like to maybe encourage us to look at is to make sure we're looking at all the different products that MCE offers in terms of the amount of renewable energy component in the power product that they're supplying. And you know, I'm a deep green customer myself, and I don't know whether that's cost effective for the city to go in that direction, but something to look at, particularly when we're providing power through these charging stations. I think that's a good marketing hook for folks to use it.
I don't want to go too far afield. I think the council's direction when we made the decision to join MCE was that at times of budget review, if the council wanted to take up the question of the MC products and their relation to the budget, that would be the appropriate time, so we could bring it either at the mid-year budget or at the annual budget.
And that's fine. It's just a footnote for this particular conversation. I think it's great that we're engaged in the way that we are and providing this service, and we're going to start charging for it. I think that would be great. I didn't notice we actually had a resolution in our package.
So Mr. Woodruff and I have been discussing that the packet appears to have had administrative error and there is no resolution included. So you should hold the public hearing and then give us direction to bring back the resolution on the consent calendar at the next meeting.
Okay, that's fine. So if we don't have anything more from the council, do we have anything from the public? Seeing none, can we provide that direction to you at this time?
Yes.
And we'll bring back a resolution for...
On the
next?
19th for the consent calendar to approve the rate.
That'd be great. Any objection to that? Oh, great. Thank you. And I think that brings us to our last substantive item on the agenda, which is the appointment of the Marin Sonoma Mosquito Vector Control Board. Can we hear from the city manager on that?
At the last meeting of the city council, the council interviewed the one applicant for an appointment to the Marin Sonoma Mosquito and Vector Control Board. That's resident Gail Bloom. The council now has the opportunity to consider whether you want to make that appointment.
Okay, any questions on the council? Any comments from the public? Seeing none, I'd actually like to make the motion to appoint Gail to that position, if that's all right. So I so move. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? No. Oh, wait.
Oh, no, as a side comment for anyone who's watching, but the council members, Tom Bradner, who's been our longtime volunteer in that position, has said that he would be here on October 19th to accept, you know, our formal thanks for serving for as many years as he has.
And that's absolutely appropriate. We'll look forward to that.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that is the last item on our agenda substantively. Does anybody else have anything to bring up?
We do have a closed session, though.
Oh, we do have a closed session.
Yes,
That's
we have a
correct.
closed
I'm sorry. I apologize. We do have one more. So should we adjourn to our closed session at this point? Let's do that. Thank you.
Can you read